Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take a stack of sources and zero in on the most important insights, just for you. Today, we're plunging into an idea that feels, well, totally backward at first glance. The notion that aiming for something massive, like 10 times better, might actually be simpler. Maybe even require less wasted effort than just trying to get, say, twice as good.
Yeah, it really does go against how we usually think, doesn't it?
Yeah.
We're sort of trained for that step-by-step incremental improvement. But our sources today, mainly excerpts from Dr. Benjamin Hardy's audiobook 10x is Easier Than 2x, they argue that this incremental thinking, that's actually what holds us back.
Exactly. And that's what's so compelling here. It's not just about, working harder in the same old way. It's about fundamentally changing the game. So our mission today is to explore why this isn't just some catchy phrase. Why is 10x truly different from 2x? What does it actually demand from us? And maybe most importantly, how could understanding this really reshape how you approach your goals, your work, maybe even who you become?
It definitely forces you to look at things, possibilities, from a totally different angle.
Okay, let's unpack this. So right at the core, the sources draw this really sharp distinction, don't they, between 2x and 10x. It's not just about the numbers being different.
No, not at all. 2x is like the default mode, right?
Mm-hmm.
For most people, most companies. It's all about small steps up. Doing more of what you already do, maybe a bit quicker, a bit more efficiently, but you're playing by the same rules. The source even calls it a smartness contest sometimes. Everyone's just fighting harder on the same crowded field.
Yeah, and you can immediately see the problem there. You end up fighting tooth and nail for tiny advantages. It takes huge amounts of energy just to inch ahead.
Exactly. It's draining. And the upside is, well, limited. 10x, though. That's not incremental. It's a leap. A qualitative shift. It's not about being just better at the old game. It's about inventing a new game, being fundamentally different and better in a way that kind of makes the old competition irrelevant.
It reminds me of that Richard Bach quote the source mentions. What the caterpillar calls the end of the world, the master calls a butterfly. The caterpillar's going for 2x, right? Crawl faster, eat more efficiently. The butterfly, that's 10x. A totally different reality.
A complete transformation. And here's the kicker, the really counterintuitive bit.
Yep.
Achieving that huge 10x transformation is often presented as simpler, or at least less draining, than the constant grind of 2x.
How? I mean, that just feels harder. Aiming for the moon versus aiming for the treetop.
Well, the argument is that the sheer size of the 10x goal is actually its secret weapon. Because it seems so out there, so impossible from where you are now, it acts like this immediate, powerful filter. Suddenly, almost everything you're currently doing, worrying about spending time on, it just becomes noise. Irrelevant.
Yep.
It forces you, absolutely forces you, to focus only on the handful of things that could possibly move the needle that much.
Okay, so a 2x goal, because it feels achievable, leaves you open to a million tiny tweaks and distractions. Trying this, trying that.
Right. Infinite fiddling.
But a 10x goal is so big it shouts, nope, none of that small stuff matters. You need something completely different.
Exactly. If you want double the sales, maybe you refine your pitch, make more calls. If you want 10 times the sales, you probably need a whole new product or market or business model. Different levers entirely.
The size of the gap forces a different kind of thinking.
Precisely. The solution has to be fundamentally different. Okay, so if the giant goal helps clarify the what, how do you actually get there? How do you generate that kind of, explosive change? The sources point to what they call the engine of 10x. And this is where it gets really interesting and maybe a bit uncomfortable. It's this intense process of shedding the 80%, letting go of the vast majority of what you do to focus fiercely on the vital 20%.
Okay, yeah. That sounds radical. Letting go of 80% of your activities, your relationships, even your identity. That's huge.
It is. And the source is very clear. This isn't just about cleaning up your to-do list. It's about courageous elimination, actively choosing to stop doing things, stop investing in relationships, maybe even stop being the person defined by those things if they represent the 80% that isn't driving your biggest results or excitement.
Like that Jim Collins line the source brings up, good is the enemy of great. It's not about stopping the bad stuff, that's easy. It's stopping the good stuff. The comfortable routines, the skills you've already mastered, the clients who pay the bills but aren't exciting. The stuff that eats up 80% of your time but only gives you maybe 20% of your real potential impact.
Exactly. And letting go of that good 80%, the source says it can feel like a real loss. Like killing something you love, because It is your comfort zone. It's your security. It's who you think you are right now. But holding on to it, that's what keeps you stuck in 2x mode.
So the paradox clicks into place a bit more. Aiming for 10x is easier because it gives you the justification, the necessity to make those painful cuts to the 80%, which then frees up all that energy to pour into the 20% that actually has exponential potential.
Right. You shift from trying to add more things to strategically removing almost everything.
Okay, but doing that, shedding 80%, that sounds incredibly difficult psychologically. What helps people actually do that? What are the mindsets or principles the sources talk about?
Great question. And yeah, it definitely requires specific ways of thinking. One absolutely key one is psychological flexibility. The source defines this basically as your ability to keep moving toward your chosen goals, those big, exciting 10x goals, even when it feels really hard emotionally. Even when fear, doubt, anxiety show up, it's about noticing those feelings, accepting them, but not letting them steer the ship.
Which is vital, right? Because aiming for 10x and shedding your comfort zone will bring up fear. It's guaranteed to feel shaky.
Absolutely. And the way the source frames it is helpful. Think of yourself not as your thoughts and feelings, but as the context or the container for them. If you are your fear, you're stuck. But if you're the space that holds the fear, you can acknowledge it and still choose to act based on your values and goals. Changing the context lets you handle way more internal complexity.
I like that. You're the stage, not just the actor having the emotion. Okay, what else?
Another huge one. Commitment creates the how. This idea is powerful. It says you don't need the full roadmap, the step-by-step how, before you commit to that massive 10x vision. In fact, the act of fully committing, creating what the source calls psychological demand, is what forces the how to emerge. Necessity becomes the mother of invention.
So you leap and the net appears. You declare the impossible future. And that commitment itself unlocks resourcefulness you didn't know you had.
Kind of, yeah. It creates this point of no return feeling. Suddenly, your focus gets laser sharp, your motivation goes through the roof, you start seeing solutions and possibilities that were invisible before. The source uses the analogy of becoming Neo in the Matrix. Suddenly, you see the underlying code, you can dodge the obstacles because the commitment is total and the stakes are high.
Love that visual. Okay, commitment helps find the how, but what about the sheer amount of doing? You can't personally execute a 10x goal, can you?
No way. And that brings us straight to who, not how. This is fundamental. You cannot get to 10x by trying to be the how for every single task. It's impossible. You absolutely must find capable, committed people, the who's, to take ownership of the 80%. That isn't your unique contribution, isn't your highest point of leverage.
And framing that who not as a cost, but as an investment, a crucial investment in freeing yourself up for that vital 20%.
Exactly.
Right.
Which ties directly into the next principle, unique ability. What is it that you're uniquely brilliant at? What activities energize you, put you in flow, bring you joy, and deliver the most disproportionate value? Identifying that, honing it, and focusing relentlessly on it, that's your 20%.
And recognizing that your unique ability today might not be your unique ability tomorrow, right? As you achieve 10x, your 20% might shift for the next leap.
Absolutely. It evolves. Then there's fitness function and finer distinctions. 10x demands extreme clarity on what exactly you're optimizing for.
Yeah.
What are your specific standards? What does success look like in minute detail? What's the precise path? That's your fitness function.
Yeah.
The source uses this really stark analogy of the Mount Erebus plane crash. A tiny error in coordinates, just a couple of degrees off, led to a catastrophic outcome thousands of miles off course. Small deviations from your core focus, your fitness function, have huge downstream consequences in a 10x journey.
Wow. So precision in your aim, even seemingly tiny details about what you're optimizing for, is critical over the long haul.
Immense. And that intense focus on your specific 20%, it builds mastery. You start seeing things others don't know. Finer distinctions? Yeah. Think of a chess grandmaster or like a top martial artist. Yeah. To an outsider, they might seem slow or like they're not doing much, but they're perceiving and reacting to subtleties, patterns, nuances, invisible to the novice because they've internalized so much complexity in their focused domain. Their 20% focus unlocks this effortless-looking mastery over the underlying 80%.
That's powerful. Deep expertise born from radical focus. And what about time? The source talks about different kinds of time.
Yeah, Kairos versus Chronos time. Chronos is clock time, linear time. Hours on the clock, days worked, just quantity. Kairos is qualitative time. Time defined by results, by performance, by deep practice, by rejuvenation. 10x thinkers, the source argues, structure their lives around Kairos. They prioritize distinct blocks for high-level performance, focused practice, and essential rejuvenation. And counterintuitively, having more free time, more rejuvenation time, isn't slacking off. It's seen as crucial for exploration, creativity, insight, which fuels higher performance during the focus work blocks.
So getting stuck on the hamster wheel, just logging more hours, that's classic Chronos, classic 2X thinking.
Totally. Working yourself into the ground is 2X. The source contrasts someone like Anthony Davis in the NBA who reached the pinnacle then maybe seemed to coast a bit, versus Nikola Jokic, who keeps finding new levels, making these quantum leaps even after being MVP. That's Kairos-driven improvement.
Interesting comparison. And the last piece, underpinning all this.
An abundance mindset. 10X comes from seeing possibilities, creating new value, collaborating, being a wanter who attracts resources and partners, not a needer stuck competing over limited scraps in a zero-sum game.
Okay, these principles together paint a really different picture of how to operate. It's demanding, but you can see the potential payoff. These principles make intellectual sense, but the stories, that's where it really hits home, seeing people actually live this stuff.
Absolutely. Let's take Michelangelo. As a teenager, just 17, he did something incredibly risky, potentially illegal and dangerous, dissecting human bodies.
Aye.
Because mastering anatomy was the absolute core 20% he needed for his first big 10X ambition, that huge Hercules statue. It wasn't just practice, it was a radical commitment that vaulted him way beyond other aspiring artists.
Talk about leaving your comfort zone. That wasn't a 2X move like carve slightly better. That was a fundamental shift in dedication and skill.
Exactly. And then later, he takes on the David, this massive block of marble damaged, abandoned, others had failed. Taking that on was pure 10X commitment to an almost impossible vision. Finishing it didn't just make a statue, it transformed him, made him legendary.
And he didn't stop. The Pieta, the Sistine Chapel, then becoming an architect. Each step was another huge leap. He had to keep letting go of the mastery he'd just achieved that became his new 80% to tackle the next, bigger 20%, constantly reinventing himself.
His whole life seems like a case study in this continuous cycle of shedding and refocusing for 10X.
Okay, what about a more modern business example? That Stream Logistics story was fascinating.
Yeah, Stream Logistics. They were deep in the 2X trap. Most of their business, like 80% of their clients, was routine freight. Low margins, fierce price competition, just grinding it out.
Yeah.
But the owner, Carson, saw this small slice, maybe only 5% of clients doing high-stakes, complex deliveries. They needed unique solutions, valued the service highly, less price-sensitive. That was the 10X opportunity.
But suggesting they ditch 95% of their clients, that must have sounded crazy. That's the ultimate shedding the 80%.
Oh, huge resistance, especially from sales, right?
Yeah.
Their world just shrank dramatically on paper. But they made the call, committed 100% to that high-stakes niche. And the results, exactly that asymmetric payoff. Revenue doubled, okay, but profits went up 4X with the same number of people.
Wow. So focusing all that energy on the 20% just exploded the bottom line.
Totally. And the team got more engaged. The work was more interesting. They started innovating, like building custom trailers. It was a total shift from quantity thinking to quality thinking, from 2X to 10X.
And then Linda McKissick in real estate, that seems like the ultimate who not how story.
Oh, Linda's journey is incredible. She went from literally $3,000 gross revenue in her first year to eventually overseeing billions in regional volume. How? Repeated 10X leaps, fueled by who not how. Her first jump was hiring an assistant for $350 a week. Terrifying expense at the time, she said. But it freed her from the 80%, the paperwork, the details. Business doubled. Hired another assistant. Double again.
She got it instantly. She couldn't scale by doing everything herself. She needed who's.
Precisely. Then she specialized, further focused only on listings, her highest value 20%, and hired buyer's agents for the rest. Became the #1 agent. Then, feeling constrained by her traditional brokerage, a 2X environment, she leaped to Keller Williams, a company built around 10X models like profit sharing and, yes, who not how. Became a franchise owner, another 10X jump. But instead of running it herself, she hired her brother-in-law Brad to run it, letting go of that 80%, then became a regional owner, hiring a whole team to manage the franchises.
Wow. Each stage involved letting go of what she'd just mastered, her previous 80%, finding the next 20%, and bringing in who's to handle the rest. Exponential growth and freedom.
These stories just bring the principles to life so clearly, don't they? The shedding, the commitment, the leverage of who's, the continuous evolution.
Yeah.
It's all there.
Yeah, seeing it play out like that across different people, different eras, makes the core idea feel much more tangible and, well, possible. Okay, so let's try and summarize this. Pulling it all together, why, paradoxically, do the sources argue that 10X is actually easier than 2X?
Right. It boils down to a few core reasons. First, like we said, it's just less crowded up there. Most people, most organizations, they're battling it out in the 2X space, making those incremental gains, aiming for something that looks impossible, automatically puts you in a league with fewer players.
Less competition means fewer headwinds, less energy wasted fighting the crowd.
Exactly. Second, that mandatory shedding of the 80% we talked about. It forces ruthless focus on the 20% that truly matters. The sheer scale of the goal acts as a filter, cutting through the noise and complexity that plagues 2x efforts.
It simplifies things by making most options irrelevant. Counterintuitive, but makes sense.
Third, it demands innovative, nonlinear solutions. You can't get 10x by just doing the 2x things harder or faster. You're forced to think differently, find shortcuts, bypass the usual roadblocks, create entirely new approaches.
That necessity driving invention again, especially when the need is exponential.
Precisely. And fourth, it inherently promotes leadership and collaboration. You simply can't do 10x alone. It forces you to build systems, to empower others, to leverage the talents of your who's. You transition from being a doer to being an architect.
Building the engine, not just being a slightly faster gear in the old one.
You got it. And finally, there's that asymmetric reward. You don't need to be 10 times better at everything. Often being just, say, 10 or 20% better or fundamentally different in your specific high-leverage 20%, that can yield 10x, 100x the results compared to spreading your energy thinly across the board like in 2x. It's about focused impact, not just linear effort.
So less about sheer grind, more about a fundamental shift in perspective, focus, delegation, and innovation. Okay, so bringing this right back to you, the listener. What does this whole deep dive into 10x thinking mean for you right now? How can you apply this?
Well, the source definitely encourages some self-reflection. First, maybe look back. Can you identify moments in your own life or career that felt like 10x jumps? Times when you experienced disproportionate growth or a real fundamental shift? What was the key 20% you focused on then? And crucially, what was the 80% maybe something comfortable or good that you had to let go of to make it happen?
Recognizing you've likely already done this on some scale can be empowering, right? It's not entirely foreign territory.
Exactly. Then shift to the present. Ask yourself, what am I really optimizing for right now? What are my unique standards? My personal fitness function? Am I crystal clear on what great looks like for me specifically?
And the tough question, what am I holding on to? What's that good 80% of my life right now? The comfortable client, the familiar project, the routine, the habit that feels safe but is actually blocking my next big leap, holding me back from a 10x possibility out of maybe comfort or fear.
And maybe the deepest question, what identity am I clinging to? The skills, beliefs, and self-image that got you here, are they the same ones needed to get you there, that much bigger future? Are you willing to evolve who you are, to shed parts of your current identity?
It really drives home that this isn't just a business tactic. It's an invitation to think about personal growth and transformation in a potentially much bigger way. Requires courage, definitely, commitment, and that willingness to release the familiar.
Yeah, it's like saying, stop fighting so hard in the crowded 2x lane. Look over here at this wide open, albeit challenging 10x path. It requires different things, but the potential is immense.
So wrapping up, the core idea from these sources isn't that 10x is easy in terms of effort, but it's simpler in terms of focus and potentially requires less wasted energy than the incremental grind of 2x. It's about operating differently. It's about pinpointing that vital 20% for your biggest goals and having the courage, the psychological flexibility, maybe the help from your who's to let go of everything else.
And it's continuous. You have to keep letting go of what made you successful yesterday, the old skills, the old identity, to embrace what's needed for tomorrow's 10x future.
Which leaves us with a really important question to think about. If achieving that kind of exponential growth, that profound transformation, really hinges on shedding the past, embracing discomfort, and focusing intensely on that narrow, high-impact path, what is one thing, maybe just one good thing, that you might be willing to let go of starting today to create the 10x future you truly desire?
Definitely something to mull over.